internet. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not asking for people to come in and do stuff like this.
Yep. So it's like Caitlin.
Yep, it looks like me. So we have some more solar winds news. However, this is not related to the sunburst malware. So, of course, because of all the news surrounding SolarWinds Orion, a lot of security researchers have begun looking deeper into the software, and they found a bunch of bugs, including remote code execution vulnerabilities. So the malware authors didn't even have to inject their own code into the into the installer. What they could have done is just use some of these bugs to gain control of the system. And of course, because Orion runs the system, you just pwn Orion, you control the system. And so one of the issues, of course, is an old protocol called MSMQ, the Microsoft messaging queue, which essentially sends messages unauthenticated, and anyone can spoof them and send messages around. Fun times. Then you can also grab the database credentials straight off the hard drive, sort of like if you have PHP installed and they have the password in plain text in one of the config files. Yep, you can do that too. Go on.
It's too bad that the stuff is not open source, so I can't make a project out of it.
No, unfortunately, it's not open source, and it's really hard to get. But yeah, it's an old piece of software that just has a bunch of bugs, and there's also a FTP vulnerability in the software as well. So there's lots of bugs coming out that people are finding.
Yeah, this is kind of the thing about closed source software. It tends to be really out of date and vulnerable, and nobody can test it easily, so it lingers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised about the Microsoft messaging queue. I mean, that has been out of commission for a long time now, and they're not even going to roll out a patch because it's deprecated. I mean, it's not a protocol anyone should be using anymore.
That's where you find a lot of bugs, is some obscure thing that you forgot about 10 years ago that's still in there.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. And then Alan, okay.
Yes, Amazon is now contracting with a startup called Netrodyne to install cameras that will monitor the performance of their delivery drivers. Amazon, of course, having recently built out a significant delivery fleet. And apparently this system will use artificial intelligence to monitor what the drivers are doing and their driving performance. So they will be monitored on things like watching their phone or making U-turns or speeding, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this technology, I guess it's still cutting edge, but it's no longer the bleeding edge. There are actually other startups that have similar technology, and even some of the major car manufacturers have flirted with similar technology. But what I find interesting about this is there are really two big ironies here. First of all, Amazon seems to be very interested in preserving the safety or reducing the liability of the company and the drivers, which is a bit ironic given that Amazon has such a terrible record with OSHA violations in its warehouses.
Right.
The second great irony is that apparently we're not getting artificial intelligence for self-driving vehicles after all. Instead, we're getting AI that will monitor humans as they try to drive.
Well, that seemed like a step towards it.
Yeah, well, I guess it is a kind of step, but given the rate at which things are moving with self-driving technology, as I understand it, it's going to be a while before we get that. But instead, we'll have what one could say is a more intrusive system for monitoring humans in the performance of their work. Now, this is not to say that it's a terrible idea to reduce accidents or to monitor vehicles and so on and so forth. But given who we're talking about here, Amazon, one has to be just a little skeptical about their plans and their policies.
Yeah, one thing I wonder is if this is going to be like the stuff where all they want to be is a slave driver, and say you're taking
Yes,
breaks.
right. And other delivery companies like UPS and FedEx, and for that matter, U.S. Postal Service, they do not have this technology. And anecdotally, their drivers perform much better on the road. They do not have a serious problem with accidents. So you have to wonder, well, why is Amazon having this problem, and why are they taking a different approach? They could instead invest in better training